George. Hey, Rachel. Hello, everybody.
Hello, good
Hi
evening.
there.
All right. Is Mr. Trout the only one that you know of that's not going to make it?
That's the only one I know of, correct?
Okay. So let's maybe give them another minute to see if we get anybody else straggling, and then we can go ahead and get started because we do have a fair amount to cover, but I'd rather wait a minute and see if we get anyone else other than backtrack.
Well, George, are you in Emmitsburg today?
No, I'm in Delaware. Just got in about a half an hour ago.
Oh my gosh, this is the last place you want to be.
Nah, it's all good.
So you go back and forth, or?
Yeah, it depends on what the travel plans are for the other things I do. So like I was there starting Monday night, and then I'm here now. I'll be back Monday night, but I'll stay through next Monday.
Okay.
So it just depends.
Yeah, the mayor was telling me some good news about some different things going on over there, so I'm excited.
Yeah, we're settling into a new normal, and then that'll change in 6 months, and it'll be just a lot of fun up here. So.
So Michelle, I mean, if you want to start, you're more than welcome. I will distribute the YouTube video out to everybody. I know everyone's time is precious. I don't want to take too much of their time.
Okay. Frank, we have you in here twice. Are you like phoned in and computered in, or can just make sure you can hear us and everything?
Hold on a second.
You must be in here twice because you're muted on my screen, but I hear you talking. So
Can you take me out somehow?
I can.
So the one you can see your face, but in the other we can hear you. So
Oh yeah, that's why I asked if you were if you also phoned in.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
let me
just gonna
figure it out.
leave it as is because I don't want to lose you. That's kind of weird.
Let me see what I can.
Frank's a little old, so give him a break.
Yeah, I'm lucky I'm here at all.
Wow, the gloves are off early tonight.
Really, man.
Oh, he can give it, trust me.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started then. Let me share my screen, get this going.
Oh yeah, so welcome everybody. This is our second meeting of our Stormwater Utility Feasibility Committee. And I just want to let everybody know, Mr. Trout did give me a call. He is unable to make it tonight. However, he will watch this recording on YouTube. And then also University of Maryland staff stated they could do a one-on-one with him to give him an update. So just wanted to give that brief rundown, but thank you for attending.
Oh, geez. All right, does everyone see the presentation okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So once again, thanks for joining us. You all know Zach and Michelle and Jen from last time. We also have one of our coworkers, Natalia, with us this evening. She's been doing some behind the scenes work for us. The agenda for tonight, we're going to do a very quick recap from the last meeting. We're going to talk briefly about the level of service analysis that we completed, which basically is, what is Emmitsburg currently doing and at what cost? And is there anything missing from your current stormwater practices? And then we're going to talk about potential financing options for how you pay for all the stuff that you need to do. And then just like last time, we'll have open discussion for you all. And if there's anyone from the public, they'll have an opportunity as well. And like last time, if you have questions as we go through, feel free to ask them. And if you think of anything after the fact, feel free to email them to Zach and he can shoot them our way. So our last meeting, we talked mostly about Stormwater 101 and why stormwater management matters. We talked about the MS4 permit, why it's important to control pollution from stormwater runoff, the fact that it is federally mandated and it's not going to go away no matter what you do, a new permit every 5 years. And then we also talked a bit about the cost of doing nothing. What happens if you ignore the requirements of the permit, both in terms of financial ramifications, as well as just what it does to your infrastructure and your community and things like that. And then what you see on the screen here is the one side of a fact sheet that we worked up after the last meeting. We'll be doing that again this evening as well. Zach, where all can people find that if they're interested in it?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to print it off and put it in our town office. We also posted it on our Facebook page and our website.
Okay.
And actually, this is going to be in our monthly newsletter too, I believe.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll do another one of those that basically summarizes everything that we talk about tonight and get that out to you. So this evening, we want to start by talking about the level of service analysis. What are you all currently doing? As we talked about last time, Zach spends about 40% of his time on MS4 related activities. He tells us he loves MS4s. He's totally good with that. And then at this point in time, it doesn't look like a full-time MS4 coordinator is needed. Yes, it takes up a lot of Zach's time, but not so much time that it warrants an extra body to do that. However, that could change depending on how you decide to handle things moving forward. And if it's going to be more work, then there is a conversation to be had about whether it needs to be a full-time person or potentially timeshare person with one of the other MS4 municipalities. But at the moment, not necessary. To date, the emphasis for your permit requirements has really been meeting those MCM requirements, the 6 different things that we talked about last time. Related to those, the town is managing the outreach and education requirements. So that's MCMs 1 and 2. The county oversees all of your construction related activities, which are 4 and 5, I believe. And then outfall inspection, which you all are doing, also falls into that, meeting your MCM requirements. So that's really where the emphasis has been, as opposed to the actual infrastructure and things like that. So your current costs for what you're doing to date for this permit cycle is $107,000 and change. And so that is from October 31st of 2018 until the end of last month, Zach, I think is when you sent those numbers. Correct. Outstanding for this current permit cycle, which ends in 2023, right? Am I doing that math right? Is $750,000 is what you still need for this permit cycle. And we talked a little bit about those expenses last time too, and some of the things they are related to. Because you've been putting so much time and effort into the MCMs and not into the other things, the majority of these outstanding costs are associated with your impervious restoration requirement. And so that includes the outstanding money left on the large tree planting that y'all are doing, funds related to the Silo Hill project, as well as a couple septic connections to the wastewater treatment plant. So those current outstanding activities are the things that are going to help you meet that impervious restoration requirement that is part of your permit. When we looked at your current activity, things that we identified as either being missing or potentially in need of expansion, Zach indicated there's a desire to expand your street sweeping, and that's also something that MDE indicated they would like to see expanded. To expand that, it's probably going to have to go through a contractor because it's just too much time for Public Works to handle. There's the potential of either expanding the rain barrel program or potentially modifying it to be some sort of rebate program to take the burden of like getting the barrels and distributing the barrels off of the town. Rather, people can get their own barrel and then just get a rebate for it. You don't currently have an asset management plan for the stormwater BMPs that you do have. So I think that that's an important thing to develop. That is really going to set the tone for how you manage all of your stormwater facilities so that they are delivering the the reductions and meeting the expectations of them. And then along the same lines, increasing the funds for your best management practices, operations, and maintenance. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about. You put these practices in the ground to maintain and treat your stormwater, and you budget for how you're going to put them in the ground. But then we tend to forget about budgeting for how we're going to actually pay to maintain them and make sure that they're doing what they're designed to do. And then the other thing that Zach had mentioned was that he would like to develop some budgets or line items for things that don't currently have them, to increase transparency about where money is being spent and what money is being spent on. So just sort of neaten up some of the categories within the budget for clarity's sake. Any questions about the level of service analysis? And I can tell you our next step with that is going to be meeting with Zach as well as the mayor and the head of public works to talk about the things that were identified through that analysis and hear how the town wants to sort of prioritize those things and put the what they want to emphasize, what needs money, what doesn't need money. So that's the next step with this piece of the conversation. All right. So with that, then we can move into the money conversation.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yep.
So the level of service analysis is really helpful for us because it helps us really get a good sense of exactly what level of funding do you need to be able to maintain the program the way your stormwater program the way you would like to be maintaining it. And so that really informs how we go about figuring out what kind of financing strategy makes sense. And when our center works with communities about figuring out how to finance a stormwater program, there's a lot of emphasis in a lot of other places about, where do we get the money from? And I think we like to take a step back and we like to look at what you're already doing and figuring out where are the opportunities to reduce costs or gain efficiencies, like work more effectively so that we're reducing the cost of the program as much as possible. Then we start to think about, okay, now that we have costs reduced as much as we can, what kind of funding streams make sense to fill the gap for what we still need to pay for. And then recognizing that the town can only do so much on public land. As we all talked about, in the last meeting, there's a lot of expectation on the town to deliver results. There's only so much public land to go around. And so how are we going to engage the private property owners in reducing the burden to the town, gaining additional pollution reductions? What sort of combination of carrots and sticks makes sense for that? So we like to look at all three of these types of buckets when we're thinking about a financing strategy. Next slide, Michelle. So what does that mean when we're talking about this in a little more depth? So on the cost reducing side, we look at a number of different things. We start with asset management. We like to look at what do you already have and how do we make sure that we are investing in the operations and maintenance for those practices so that they perform the way we want them to, they continue to deliver the results that we want, and that we're not going to end up in some sort of situation where we have catastrophic failures that are going to be way more expensive to fix and address than the little bit of investment in maintenance over time. So we like to start with asset management. How do we make sure that we're taking care of what we've already got? Because you guys have done a lot of good work already. And you want to make sure that it's delivering what you think it's going to deliver. The next thing we like to look at, we sort of call it dig once. And it's this idea that in addition to your stormwater activities, there's other stuff going on in the town, right? There are probably plans for for capital improvements. There are plans for parks and recreation. There are plans for maybe for bicycle pedestrian plans, just there's all sorts of different types of project plans that operate in a community. And so we like to look at those and say, where are the places in those projects that are already going to happen on the ground where you might be able to add a little bit of additional project to get some stormwater benefits. And we like to do that because you already have the people on the ground, you already have the equipment in place, you already have all of that activity happening. And so if you can add a little bit to get some additional stormwater, it's always going to be less expensive than doing a stormwater project in and of itself. So we like to look at asset management, we like to look at dig once, we like to look at leveraging other community priorities, which can often be very intertwined with the dig once idea. You know, if there are plans for economic development for a main street, would that, you know, adding trees has proven to be something that increases economic activity. So do we want to direct street trees to a particular place? What are some of the other things going on in your community that we can leverage to deliver multiple benefits, right? So that an investment in stormwater activities or stormwater practices is delivering benefits beyond water quality or flooding management. They're delivering economic development, or they're delivering urban heat island mitigation, or they're delivering recreational opportunities. So looking to see how we can make those investments deliver more. And then collaboration is the other thing that we like to look at. You know, this Emmitsburg is one of 7, and if you think about it, one of 6 MS4s in the community, excuse me, one of 8 total, one of 7 that are small, similarly sized, not necessarily next to each other, right? Not necessarily located next to each other, but similarly sized and dealing with a lot of the same situations. And so if there's an interest in street sweeping, would it make sense to go into some sort of shared service agreement with the other communities, so to reduce the cost for all, or if you reach a point where you think someone needs to be managing stormwater, where we need to take more of that away from Zach's to-do list because he has a to-do list that far exceeds his capacity. You know, does it make sense, even if it's not a full-time position for Emmitsburg, does it make sense to have a shared stormwater manager? That could be something that might be of interest down the line. So just looking for those opportunities to collaborate. I think the easiest and first hit that we often see with communities that choose to collaborate is around those first 2 MCMs, the minimum control measures around outreach and engagement, outreach and education, and then around public participation. Sometimes it doesn't make sense for a bunch of communities in a similar jurisdiction to all be trying to do their own outreach and engagement activities. Sometimes shared messaging can have a bigger impact. And so, and could be less expensive if everyone is in on it together. So collaboration is another one of those potential cost reducers that we like to look at. Next slide, Michelle. And then there's the funding streams and communities. You know, again, I think I probably said this hokey thing in the last conversation, but you know, every community's stormwater financing strategy is a bit of a snowflake. They have to do the combination of cost reducers, funding streams, and private sector engagement that makes sense for them. This is just sort of a chart of the ways that a lot of different types of communities tend to fund their stormwater programs. I think to this point, Emmitsburg has they've been incredibly effective at getting grant programs in the door. Those are really, really valuable for those shovel-ready projects that you can put in the ground, maybe demonstration projects that can sort of get the community understanding what's expected, how these things function, why they're important. I have yet to see a program that's willing to invest in operations and maintenance, a grant program that's willing to invest in operations and maintenance. So They are limited in that way. And then the general fund, I think, has been the other way that Emmitsburg to this point has tended to lean. And you're not alone. This is the way the majority of communities, similar size, similar challenges. This is the way that a majority of the communities in Maryland are funding their program, through a combination of general funds and grants. The beautiful thing about the general fund is it can be used for project, installing projects, but also for operations and maintenance. The challenge is that you're competing with all sorts of other really important community services and capital needs. And so, that means, more competition for those funds. It also means that you may have a year where you're able to get budget line items, and the next year you may not be able to. And so there's some inconsistency in how that funding comes through. And so that can be challenging. There are a lot of communities that look at debt service. They look at loans either through the state's revolving loan fund program or through, just individual bond financing. Again, those are great for capital projects. They are not going to cover operations and maintenance. They're handy because you can get a large sum of money up front to pay for something, but then you need a revenue stream to pay that off over time. There's also permit or development or inspection fees, or some combination of those. A lot of communities use those. And those can be helpful because they are very clearly tied to the need to expand water services. So charging that fee covers the cost of expanding the services. So there's a really tight connection between why you're charging the fee and what it's going towards. That's not going to cover operations and maintenance. That's going to cover capital costs. And a lot of communities don't particularly care for that route because they feel like it's going to limit development opportunities in their community. There are stormwater fee systems. They have the upside of capital, being able to cover capital costs and operations and maintenance costs. They're often viewed to be more equitable because when you structure them fairly or accurately, they are charging a particular parcel for the amount of impervious surface, the amount of like rooftops and pavement and what have you on that particular parcel. And so they're viewed to be more equitable because there's a tie-in between the fee that's being paid and the amount of runoff that a particular parcel is creating. No one likes the downside is no one likes the idea of a new fee. And they can be, depending on what kind of administrative structures you have in place, that can be a challenge as well. But again, that's an option that's on the table, and it will deliver, if they're structured properly, they deliver a sufficient amount of revenue on a reliable time frame. And then other communities who are not comfortable going the stormwater fee route may do a tax district. It gives them the option of drawing the district lines in a way that might make more sense for who's upstream contributing to challenges, who's downstream benefiting from the practices that are being put in place. But they're not always as equitable as the stormwater fee systems because they're not always directly tied to a particular parcel's amount of runoff. They also are not applied to nonprofit parcels who, are also part of the community and have runoff coming off of their properties. So I guess I will just close this slide out with saying that typically a community does not rely on any one particular one of these mechanisms. There's usually, we talked about this on the last call, right? This stuff's expensive. And there's not one magical financing mechanism that's going to deliver a sufficient amount of revenue. So it's typically a combination of these. I will say, though, if you have one of these programs where either you have a dedicated line item in your general fund or you have a fee system, it really does open up the prospects for some of those borrowing opportunities, because then you have that steady revenue stream. you can get that big cash infusion up front to do the projects that you need to do in the near term. And then you have that steady revenue stream to pay off that low or no interest loan in the long run. Next slide, Michelle. And then I'll just wrap it up by saying, we also need to engage private parcel owners, right? Because as we've said today and last month, there's no amount of public property available that's going to be able to do everything that the permit is expecting of the town. And so it becomes really important to figure out the ways to engage the private property owners, both residential and then some of the other types of property owners, whether that be schools or the commercial sector or the faith-based institutions. What are the ways that we can encourage things like, and Emmitsburg is already doing this. I should back up and say, Emmitsburg has the tree program with Daughters of Charity. I think that's a great example of the kind of partnerships that can really have a big impact in both delivering not only stormwater benefits, but a broader set of co-benefits to the community. And so those types of tree plantings and the rain gardens, and then there's the rain barrel program that has been successful so far that could certainly be enhanced and amplified. And so what are the ways that we can either incentivize or expand good programming or incentivize additional programming that really will get some of those private property owners interested? A lot of communities choose to marry these incentive programs with a fee system, so that if there's a fee system in place, then perhaps there's an opportunity for parcel owners to reduce the amount of runoff coming from their parcel so that they get a credit on their fee system. So there's a lot of hybrid opportunities that we can take a look at that might make sense for Emmitsburg. So I guess with that, we'd like to, that was a solid, 25 minutes of us talking at you. So that's a lot. I guess we'd like to open it up to hear what you all think, either about what you heard about the level of service and if you think we're on target with that, or the different types of cost reducing mechanisms, funding streams, private sector engagement that you think might make sense for the town, things that you think are working well that we should, continue to expand upon. This is where we'd really welcome hearing from y'all on what's working, what's not, what's needed.
It's your lucky day. I'll go first.
All right.
Everything you said makes perfectly good sense to me.
Can you
And,
tell that to my husband that I made sense about something?
Yeah, I sure will. Our problem is, and it's not your problem, it's our problem. We're up against a lot of things with water and sewer. So putting another fee on the townspeople is probably not going to be top of my list, because we're going to have to do something with water or sewer rates. And they say, okay, one of them is, I think our sewer rate, we can drop some, our water rate, we got to make higher. But then that's not going to help us with repairing sewer lines that need to be repaired and things like that. So because of a different style of management for the last 40 years, I'm not accusing our current staff, because they'll break my windows out and stuff. But 40 years of not looking at infrastructure is what's got us in this hole.
Sure.
That we need the money to get rid of the brown water and to keep the sewer from coming out into our parks.
Sure.
And so that's going to be a burden we're going to put on our citizens to start with. And now I'm being told that the next thing they're looking to do is having to charge kids to play baseball on the baseball fields because we're short on money and things like that. And it just makes it really, really hard to explain to people that we have to put all this money into this that we don't have. I know it's not your problem, but I just want to tell you what we're up against. And TJ, please correct me if you think I'm way off base.
No, I think you're right on base, Frank. I think, obviously the issue that we're going to have is if we come out with another fee on top of everything and we have our water and sewer changing as well, there might be a revolution within.
Yeah, and you guys, y'all aren't alone. And thank you for sharing that, Mr. Davis and TJ. I appreciate where you're coming from on that. And y'all aren't alone in that. There's communities all across the state that are trying to figure out how to balance that, and especially with the long-term impacts of not maintaining assets, whether that be stormwater, drinking water, or wastewater asset. That our water service assets have been under cared for a very long time, and we're now all sort of coming to grips with that. And any recommendations that we make, fee system or outside of a fee system, any recommendations that we make would need to take into account what types of investments that the town and that the ratepayers are already making in the community. So thank you for that.
I had a question on the level of service analysis part. This might sound silly because I missed the very beginning of the last session, and this might have been talked about. On the street sweeping part, we have quite a bit of pavement on our campus with the school, our main campus and everything. We do some sweeping there. We have a little guy that goes out and sweeps, but I don't know that we say what we're doing to you guys. I mean, I don't have a reporting mechanism, nor do I know we're doing the proper thing to meet a requirement that might be out there. So on that particular thing and other things that business owners or property owners could do, are there things that people might be doing that could go towards some of these credits that we just don't have the information on, or through lack of education, I don't know where to look for it, I should say. I'm not sure who I'm directing that question at, but it's more,
Zach, are you able to speak to that at all?
Yeah, the last time I spoke with MDE, I believe it was just for public streets. However, you bring up a really good point. You have a lot of pavement over there. So I'm going to email them tomorrow and ask that, because even a little bit of credit helps.
Well, and yeah, because the thought process, we got a large drive. We've got, hundreds of parking spaces. And I remember last meeting, Mr. Trout mentioned something about, sweeping their parking lot. And I'm thinking, what things, the impermeable surfaces out there, how much does that help? It might be a minor thing, but it's also something that can be done, a little thing that can be done on the mitigation if there's any other things associated with that. And then relating to the tree planting thing that we did, okay. When you're looking at these budget numbers that we saw there, you received grants for the actual cost of the trees to be planted. We just provided the land on a 25-year easement. Are those numbers anywhere in there? Because they're how are they stuck within those figures I'm seeing? So that was just a curiosity of mine.
You want me to answer that, Jen?
Michelle, we accounted for that, did we not?
So the numbers that you sent, Zach, accounted for part of that, right? Like you still need to find $12,000 to cover the end amount of that. But I believe the numbers that you sent me included all of the costs of the tree planting.
Yes. Yep. So the 700 and I think it was some odd $1,000, that includes all of the grants that we received as well. So for example, the tree plantings, the town has to come up with a $12,000 match. And in the scheme of things, for over a $400,000 project, that's a really good deal on our end.
Okay.
But for the Silo Hill Basin project, We did receive a $34,000 design grant. We applied for implementation grant just last week for $199,000. So we don't know if we're going to get a grant for that or not. So that $199,000 that we still need to come up with, that's included in that figure.
So that figure is your worst case scenario. You have potentially more money coming in that will cover pieces and parts of that, but worst case scenario, that's the deficit that you're currently looking at.
Okay. All right. And then, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling on, but it led to another question. When in the collaboration aspect that you're talking about with other municipalities trying to do the same thing we are, I'm assuming they're going after the same grants we are. And is there a better way to coordinate those efforts? Because some of those grants might help you plant trees, which helps us, but say another municipality doesn't have the land to plant trees. And, I don't know, is that information being shared between municipalities to help things? So everybody's not barking up the same tree and everybody can get money from the best sources, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, Zach, to the extent that things have happened to this point, I'll let you comment on that. But I will say from our perspective, what we see from the funders is proposals that are multi-jurisdictional are very compelling for a couple of different reasons, right? They like to see the coordination. They like to see the potential for broader impact on the ground. And they like the idea of managing one grant and not four. And they're also, the grantors are also under a certain amount of expectation from their boards to spread the money around, right? So if they can say, we have one shared grant in Frederick County, that's much more likely to be successful than for them to say, oh, well, we have, 4 different grants, 4 different proposals from Frederick County, but we got to spread the money around. So we can't necessarily fund all 4. Just from a funder perspective, it becomes much more compelling. And then, if you were going to go the route at any point down the line of looking at the Maryland State Revolving Loan Fund to bundle those projects into one proposal to the state would also probably be much more compelling. But the grant funders definitely like to see that, and a lot of them are moving towards prioritizing multi-jurisdictional proposals for funding.
Another place where that multi-jurisdictional mindset is really important is actually with neighboring jurisdictions. If you're talking about upstream, downstream impacts of a project. So like, for example, if you have a stream restoration project and you need to do one downstream and they need to do one upstream, they like to see that collaboration as well, because it doesn't make any sense to do a downstream project before you've done an upstream project. So if you can do them at the same time, they like to see that, which also can a lot of times also lead to decreased cost of projects, right? Like if 2 jurisdictions are going to use the same firm to do their design work and the same company to do their construction work, that can a lot of times lead to a decreased cost as well, because it's bundle a project for services. So there's a lot of ways it can come into play.
Yeah, I know Streamlink Education, who's doing our tree plantings, they received a massive grant, not only to do our tree plantings, but some in Thermon as well. And I believe there's another jurisdiction. I don't know if they're working directly with the municipalities, but I know I've never received an email or a phone call from any other municipality in Thermont asking to share services. I think it's an excellent idea. I didn't know it was a possibility. So I think, especially for like street sweeping, instead of, one municipality each having a street sweeper, we can all share services. So I think that's something we definitely need to look into.
Mm-hmm. And with street sweeping, even a lot of the larger jurisdictions aren't necessarily sharing services, but they are contracting street sweeping out. Prince George's County contracts a lot of their street sweeping out. The district owns their street sweepers, but they pay contracted people to drive them. So they're not using their DPW folks to do that. So there's all sorts of, particularly with street sweeping, all sorts of unique things happening to get around the time and cost associated with it. Especially as you look at the newer sweepers that are getting you more credit, you know, the vacuum sweepers as opposed to the brush sort of ones. So street sweeping is a hot topic for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also a lot of people are looking at cooperative purchasing agreements for things as well, for different types of materials, whether it's road salt or like even when I worked at the Council of Governments, there were jurisdictions that were looking at cooperative purchasing, even just for like office supplies and things like that, especially in this area where there's now foam bans and stuff like that. And so they were looking at ways that they could develop cooperative purchasing agreements to get things, all sorts of things at a reduced rate. So
inclusive of things like nursery stock and other types of in the ground BMP materials.
I have a quick question then. And I guess George would have to be included in this. So George, when you mentioned the school and stuff, does the daughters have like control and say over what gets done on the school property as well at Mother Seton?
Yeah, that's correct. It's part of a 73-acre parcel that includes the main building. So we own a little bit on one side of Tom's Creek, and then the main part of our campus is on the other side of Tom's Creek within the town limits.
All right, so my question for you then is, I have a very good relationship, and I guess this is towards everybody. I have a very good relationship with the principal and in fact, the vice principal. And, you know, could we do like a dual thing where we use this as a fundraiser for the school as well as help with the MS4 and, you know, offer not tree donations, but, you know, purchase a tree to be planted on campus. And, you know, if we can get like plaques made up or something like that, you know, maybe a lot of parents would be, oh, hey, I can leave my legacy at Mother Seton and on the campus. And, you know, you obviously have a lot of property. You have that fence that was just built between the ball fields and the property, you know, maybe do some trees there and some other things like that. And it might not be a huge amount of trees, but it could offset some of the costs to the town. Would that, with private planning like that, does that count towards the MS4 stuff?
That's a question for Zach, but I think just from on the sisters, their desire on environment, it's one of their primary emphasis. There's 4 main emphasis every 6-year period. The environment's one of them. And so that's why we were happy to engage with the town for the easement. And we have simple projects we do on our campus on our own. Like if we lose a tree to disease or something, we make a point of planting 2 more. It's sort of like a rule that we have. Now, does that count? No, I don't know, because we don't document that. So that's another communication thing. If we're planting 50 trees a year because we've lost 25, that's a net gain, but nobody knows that. So to your point, TJ, that, yeah, that could be something we talk to Ms. Kilty about, and then talk to leadership within the daughters about partnering up. But the main thing is to make sure that the credit is then able to be garnered and how that mechanism works. Because I know that there's requirements within the tree planting that, you know, you can't just plant a tree and then hope it stays there 25 years, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So we'll need to know the rules of the game before we can make that kind of offer. And the last statement I'll make on trees, we have it's a fundraising mechanism for we're a nonprofit. So our shrine likes to raise money through various means, and the school would too. Trees and plaques tend to be like some think it's a low-hanging fruit, but it's not a great moneymaker. It's a great dual purpose thing, and I think the need to do something for the environment as opposed to for the organization. I don't want to speak for Kathy, but I think the daughters would be probably more interested in seeing the money go towards the environmental needs rather than towards their ministries. But well, yeah, certainly we can talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, TJ, a sponsorship program like that is a really effective way of engaging the private sector. And maybe one of the things that our team can think about is what sorts of documentation or record keeping could we help y'all develop to make sure that those plantings are getting credited, and or that there's guidance for how to do it in a way that makes it creditable, and then how we document it so that it is credited. I think you're right, George, that these aren't necessarily always big money makers, but they do defray costs a little bit, and they have the dual purpose, though, of engaging the community and educating the community about the value of putting trees in the ground. And so, when you think about the dual purpose, the return on investment becomes a little stronger than maybe what it looks like in a cost benefit analysis.
Well, almost along those same lines, then I posed this question because obviously, Zach, Frank, and I are going to have to stand in front of the firing squad if and when we impose this fee. As weird as this statement might sound, does the town find a vendor that has trees available and basically offer it to the town, with our 2,700 citizens, people in town, and say, okay, look, we can offset your fee if you buy the tree from the town and plant it and show proof of it, and kind of work some angles there as well. Because you look at some of these neighborhoods, we're not in a heavily wooded area. You have the Brookfield development in Southgate, Northgate, and places like that. They're not overrun with trees, and there might be a lot of people that try to jump at the opportunity to plant a nice tree in their yard, or 2 trees or 3 trees. And if we run it through the town, we can guarantee, okay, hey, we have numbers that are credited towards us, as well as, people will be like, all right, well, I'm not paying a fee to not know where it goes. I know I'm planting a tree for that fee. I'm just spitballing an idea out there.
Yeah, I would, and Michelle is really knowledgeable about this as well, but I will just say that, yes, TJ, that is one of the gateway incentive programs. I'm not suggesting that a fee is the solution, but I'm saying if there were a fee system approved, having some sort of credit system like that is usually part of the package. And it's a great way to incentivize private property owners to do something like that, to put trees or rain barrels or conservation landscaping on their properties, to defray their fee costs. And that actually is not just residential, that can be for commercial as well.
Yeah, and a lot of times they are, I don't want to say more beneficial, but yes, like easier. Like in the district, they have a program specifically for schools, they have a program specifically for businesses, and they have a program specifically for residential. And the difference between the residential and the businesses and schools a lot of times tends to be how much credit you can get and how easy it is to get the credit, because anything you're claiming credit for has to be inspected and it has to be tracked, right? And so the ROI on a homeowner planting a tree versus a church planting 50 trees or installing, a massive rain garden, when you think about the cost and time of keeping those things inspected so that you can, and maintain so that you can get credit for them, there tends to be a bigger ROI on the programs that focus more on like schools and churches and places like that. But everywhere I have ever worked where there has been a fee, and that's been a lot of places, they all have some sort of credit program that even individual homeowners can get some money off of their fee. The other thing to think about when you're structuring those programs, and this gets back to the Zach time thing, is they do take a lot of time to monitor and control and maintain those programs as well. So that's where, thinking about another person, or is there a way you can, Is there a nonprofit you can partner with, like a watershed group or something that can help you with that process? Because they do tend to be kind of labor intensive for the people who are managing them. So it's all about putting all of your chips on the table and figuring out how much ROI are you going to get out of it and which aspects of it are worth it. That said, if that's an avenue that you want to pursue, there's no shortage of programs that we can point you toward as examples of ones that work well as ones that don't work so well. So it's not a situation where you have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to think about, like anything, which pieces and parts from which programs are going to work best for you, and how do you cobble them together to make something that makes sense for your community.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I know Zach and Maddie, and they spent a lot of time with the rain barrel program, and as good as rain barrels are, I don't think they are, for lack of a better word, as sexy as planting trees, possibly, and using those in people's yards. So I mean, it's just something that kind of popped in my head, like, hey, we obviously already had the rain barrel program. I wish it was a prettier topic for people where like, oh yeah, that's awesome, I'll do that. Versus, hey, plant a tree, make your yard look nice, blah, blah, blah. And, maybe people would jump at that.
Yeah. And the benefit of rain barrels is we also think about rain barrels as sort of the gateway drug into stormwater management. They're really easy for people to do. But the downside of them is, like, unless you have a lot of capacity, they don't also get you as much bang for your buck. They're good for water quantity reduction, but they're not great for water quality improvement. You don't get a lot of nutrient reduction from them. It is more about containing the water, slowing the water down, and slowly releasing it back into the system so it has time to infiltrate and you don't overwhelm your system. But they're not as great for nutrient reductions, which trees and other kinds of plantings have a much better benefit there. So
Any other questions, comments? This has been a really helpful discussion so far. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I mean, this is just a lot to take in. There's been a lot of good ideas. It's a big project for the town, and I know that Frank and TJ and Zach have a much better appreciation for all the other things the town is facing, such as the sewer improvements and water supply improvements and all that. And I certainly appreciate their input on things, but it seems like we just have to approach this from all different angles, and it seems like that's kind of what we're doing now. I mean, Zach has been great at getting grants so far, and that's very helpful, and all the other ideas that have been put out there, especially doing sweeping on private property, private businesses, besides Trouts. I know there's the antique mall that has a large parking lot, and there's probably other places I'm not thinking of right now. So yeah, all of the above, and collaborating with other jurisdictions, I think it's a great idea. But at the end of the day, it still might be a bullet we have to bite to come up with some fee. We need to be prepared for that, but having some credit for homeowners or for whoever, businesses and homeowners, would be good. And just a lot of public education for folks, I think would be beneficial for the little things that they might be able to do that, might get some credit, would be helpful. But so far I'm appreciating the conversation, and trying to help as much as I can.
We appreciate that. And I think we wholeheartedly agree with you that education piece is huge. People are not going to be willing to change their behaviors if they don't understand the value of it. And so that communication piece is really huge.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we wrap up and talk about next steps?
Ooh.
So I have a quick question that's slightly off topic, but it relates somehow. Is the town getting any funds from the infrastructure, the federal infrastructure bill? Are we getting any funds for sewer and water that you're aware of?
Yeah, so we are getting, I think, about $3 million. And I know the town is going to be putting a lot of that towards the water and sewer infrastructure replacements. So I know there's been talk of possibly using some of that for MS4 as well. However, the board hasn't approved that yet because we haven't presented it to them yet. But that's always a possibility, is we can use some of that funds. However, that's just a Band-Aid issue right now.
One time thing.
Right. But it's extremely helpful now.
Yep.
And also something to think about, depending on what kind of improvements you're going to be doing with that infrastructure money. Is there an opportunity to build additional stormwater into it? Like, not only maybe do separate stormwater, but how can you employ that dig once mentality and tweak things a little bit so that you're getting some additional stormwater credit out of whatever infrastructure improvements you have to do?
Yeah. And we really changed our mentality with this whole permit. I think, Mark, you're probably aware, and some people are aware of the North Staten Avenue Green Street plan that we're working on. Our level 1 was to get the concept plan done. We got that done. We got a $17,000 grant from Chesapeake Bay Trust. And step 2, level 2, will be to get a grant to do the engineered plans. However, we want to wait to get our water lines engineered, and there's some other odds and ends that we have to get done first before we can apply for that grant. And then step 3, level 3, will be the implementation. And we're hoping to implement that within the next 2 years when we replace our water lines going down that street. So, little things like that we're trying to work on. Just like certain streets, like the DePaul Water Street, there's not enough room to hardly do anything down that street. So when we replace the water line, doesn't make much sense to do a green street there. But there are certain areas where it's going to make a lot of sense, such as North Staten Avenue.
Good for you for getting concept planning funding. That's really, really hard to get.
Yeah, we got lucky. I got $17,000. I asked for 18, but I got 17. So
Yeah, that's not bad.
Run with
We've asked
it.
for a lot of that and never gotten any of it. So, so I'm jealous.
Those do seem to be the toughest dollars to get. So that's great. And it sounds like that whole dig once mentality is already there. So that's outstanding.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we don't have anybody else on. So I don't know, Zach, if you'll get if people see this, we'll send you questions or not. But what our next steps are, so we're going to continue reviewing budget information and continue with the level of service analysis in a little more detail. And then, like I said, we'll develop an outreach 2-pager related to this meeting so that you can get that out. Oh, excuse me. Our next meeting is Thursday, January 20th at 7 o'clock. And at that meeting, we're going to be talking about blended financing models. So we are fully entrenched in the money conversation now.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I think we had a really good meeting.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you all for the conversation. This was really helpful for us. And we look forward to connecting with you after the holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy New Year.